first time I cleared a modern cruise terminal at disembarkation with the facial recognition kiosk instead of the old school way with the customs officer, I was shocked pleasantly by how fast and easy it was. A camera flashed, matched my face to the passport photo on file, and the gates opened and I was free to go. The ease of disembarkation is the upside of today's high-tech ships. But are these features truly game-changing, or are they just marketing fluff? I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship, and today we're going to unpack the high-tech promises that cruise lines are making. But do they really work, and will they actually add value? First, let's talk about why cruise lines are betting on tech. Cruise lines love to announce that they have the latest and the greatest and the newest on their ships, and that their ships are the most technologically advanced at sea. According to a 2025 trends report, cruise line operators are rolling out facial recognition check-in, AI-powered bookings, voice-controlled cabins, robot room service, and even augmented reality entertainment options. Now, these innovations are designed to remove friction. For example, with the facial recognition, you scan your face instead of presenting documents, and it makes things very easy. And others are about enhancing entertainment and the cruise experience. So these marketing promises, they sound like magic, but as a professor who studies business and someone who cruises every month, I know that there's always going to be a trade-off. Now, cruise ships have gotten larger and more crowded. Embarkation, dining reservations, and show bookings, they can create long lines. And I'm a very impatient person and I hate those long lines. So technology gives us a way to help make things run more efficiently, and in some cases with the cruise lines, collect data about us to upsell us on things like specialty dining and spa treatments. Now, I appreciate any innovation that makes our limited vacation time run smoother. For example, I love the Carnival Hub app. I always do the flexible time dining. I love being able to check into dinner before I'm actually there. I get a wait time and then it pings my phone through the app when my table is ready. So I love stuff like that when it works. But I've also encountered enough glitches and some privacy questions to approach each of these new smart innovations with a little bit of skepticism. Now, let's talk about the feature that you'll encounter first on a cruise. Sometimes even before you get to the cruise terminal, when you go to check in online, a lot of cruise lines will ask you if you consent to facial recognition. Now, that does make things more efficient, but that does open up some privacy concerns. But the way it works is that cameras at the cruise terminal compare your face to the photo associated with your reservation, which allows you to embark and disembark really quickly. It stops those needs for manual inspection, and it's really efficient. And cruise lines are also using facial recognition for things like helping you identify your photos. So when you're on a cruise, there's always cruise line photographers taking professional photos. They're trying to upsell you on those photos. They're not cheap. And now they use facial recognition to associate your face in your photos with your account. So with some cruise lines, you can actually look and review your photos that have been taken of you by these pros on the app, and it's done through facial recognition. Now, cruise lines argue that this makes things more efficient, and in the case of embarkation and disembarkation, it reduces those bottlenecks. I personally love it. I love getting on and off the ship really quickly. I love having my photos matched to myself, although I have sometimes gotten other people's photos by mistake as well. But I know not everybody loves these types of things. My boyfriend, for example, he has all these privacy concerns. He's way locked down. I am not. And for me, I'm happy to trade off any privacy concerns. And they do claim that they get rid of your photo and delete it after the cruise. Who knows if that is the case? I don't know. But I do know that it makes the system much more convenient. But privacy is a valid concern when it comes to facial recognition. You're basically giving a for-profit corporation your biometric data. Now, again, cruise lines, they claim they delete these facial scans, but the policies vary from cruise line to cruise line, and they aren't always necessarily transparent. Now, if you are uncomfortable with this, always ask if you can opt out. Like, for example, when you go to register online for Carnival before your cruise, you're doing your online check-in, you can opt in to facial recognition. But if you do opt out, you can be prepared to wait longer and show your physical documents. Now for me, I probably should be more concerned with my privacy than I am. So for me, the convenience outweighs the risk. So I'm always gonna opt into those sorts of things. But what do you think? Are you concerned with just handing over your biometric data and your consent to use it to the cruise lines? Or is it no big deal and it's the inevitable wave of the future? Next up are voice-controlled cabins and digital assistants. MSC Cruises recently introduced a voice-enabled virtual personal assistant called Zoe, and it was developed with Harman and Samsung, and it sits in cabins kind of like a ALEXA device. I can't say her name because I have one and she'll start talking to me. But this device is like that, and it sits in cruise ship cabins on certain ships. Now, I've sailed MSC a lot. I have yet to encounter a ship that has one of these devices, but from what I found, it's on Bellissima, Grandiosa, and Virtuosa. Now, guests activate it just like you do your home devices by saying, "Okay, Zoe," to ask about onboard facilities or to get directions. It's basically connected to the MSC app. Now, it's powered by artificial intelligence. It can speak in 7 languages, which is helpful because MSC is a European-based cruise line trying to break into the US market. So they have a very diverse base of clients who speak different languages. And it is programmed to answer hundreds of common questions. So instead of having to pick up the phone and call guest services, wait in line at guest services, or scour through the app trying to find what it is that you need, it's meant to answer those questions more efficiently. Now, it is an impressive concept on paper, but again, I have yet to encounter a Zoe, and I don't know if it's Zoe or Zoe, but I'm going to call it Zoe. But reviews from cruisers who have used it mention that it struggles with accents sometimes. So even though it's multilingual, it doesn't necessarily understand accents very well. And cruisers that have used it actually ended up preferring using the app or calling guest services instead of relying on the Zoe device. Now, MSC intended to roll it out to more ships in their fleet, but the digital assistant has not quite become ubiquitous. And this highlights that gap between marketing hype and actual usefulness and adoption. Now, I do love my ALEXA device at home. I have one in almost every room, so I get accustomed to it. So when I go on a cruise, I actually find myself saying, "Hey, ALEXA, what's the weather today?" And I realize, oh, Melissa, you're not at home. You don't have that device here. So I personally think that I would use it for things like checking the weather or asking about what time is the comedy show tonight, but it has to work right. Now, other cruise lines have experimented with voice-activated features too, namely Princess Cruises. If you take a Princess cruise, their medallion class uses a wearable device and an app that opens your stateroom door automatically. And I think that is pretty cool. I have yet to experience that, but that sounds really cool and really efficient, especially if you return to your stateroom, you have your hands full, you've been out to port all day, you've got a beach bag, you're sandy. It's just you don't want to go digging around for your stateroom card. And it also lets you order food or drinks from anywhere on board the ship. So that sounds pretty cool as well and actually helpful. Now, some cabins respond to voice commands for lights and curtains. Now, reports from passengers indicate that these systems work most of the time, but hiccups with Wi-Fi systems can cause issues, forcing you to go back to the old school traditional switches and ways of operating things. So as we know on land, technology is great just like at sea until you're fumbling around with some digital device or tool that doesn't listen or doesn't work. So the lesson, voice control, it's convenient when it works, but it is maddening when it doesn't. My ALEXA device will tell you I've maybe said some choice cuss words to her sometimes when she doesn't listen to me or I repeat the same command over and over and over again. So before you rely on these things, take a moment and make sure you find the manual controls. You know how to do things the old-fashioned way because we unfortunately cannot always rely on these emerging technologies. And remember that digital assistants, they're there to supplement, not to replace the crew. Crew members and the old school ways of looking at your stateroom TV or the app, that's going to be better than a lot of these innovations, at least as they are in their infancy. Next, let's talk about robots. Now, the idea of robots at sea might feel like science fiction, but there are some real examples. One of the best examples is Royal Caribbean's Bionic Bar. This is on some of their ships, and they feature robotic arms that shake cocktails programmed on a touchscreen. So guests line up, they choose their base spirit, their mixers, and then they get to watch the arms move with mechanical robotic precision. Now, Carnival and other cruise lines have experimented some with robotic things like pizza delivery, but according to cruise industry reports, such robot room service is still kind of in the future. We haven't seen this become ubiquitous yet. I don't know if we will. Now, from what I've seen from cruisers who have tried the Bionic Bar, they say it's kind of a one and done. It's kind of cool to do it one time. It's entertaining to watch it, but they don't really have an interest to do that every single time they want or need a drink. They miss that banter with the bartender. Robots follow scripts, they can't improvise, they can't adjust your drink on the fly, they certainly can't talk to you about your day in port or where you're from. And because each drink is programmed, lines can form when everybody wants to stop and see the show. Now, I'm not opposed to robots. I love technology. I love artificial intelligence, things like ChatGPT. Robots can really excel at repetitive tasks and free up crew for more personalized services, but they are, right now at least, a novelty rather than a necessity. And when I picture a perfect cruise evening, I don't envision myself interacting with robots, but rather talking to people, because that's what I love about cruising. Meeting people, learning about where they're from, learning about what it's like working on a cruise ship when I'm talking to the crew on the ship. And so it's a matter of balancing efficiency with that human connection, and that balance is key. Another technology cruise lines tout is augmented reality, or AR. Now, this can take the form of AR treasure hunts for kids, art tours where information pops up on your phone when you point it at a certain QR code or a painting or a virtual screen or something like that. Now, these interactive features, they can be delightful distractions, especially for families. And I just got off of MSC World America, and they had an AR experience. A lot of the kids were using it, and that looks pretty cool. It's another great addition to the entertainment options on a cruise. Now, from what I've heard from people that have used these things, they're fun, but again, kind of like the robotic bionic bartenders. They're kind of a one and done. They're fun, but for a limited scope. And when it comes to the overall cruise experience, most cruisers do still prefer the good old-fashioned deck games, the live shows, the interactive things, meeting people, playing ping pong on the Lido deck. Now, for me, the appeal of a cruise lies in those human interactions and the ocean views and the travel, of course. So again, AR should be looked at as a supplement rather than a replacement for those experiences. So while I love seeing cruise lines innovate and add these things as a supplement, I hope they never use them or look at them as a replacement for those traditional experiences that require that human interaction and that human touch. Now, artificial intelligence, it isn't just about robots, but it's also about the behind the scenes stuff. It's also about the computing stuff, those booking algorithms and those recommendation engines. Cruise lines use data from your onboard activities, believe it or not. Again, privacy concerns everywhere, but cruise lines use our data from all the things that we're doing on board and then use that with an algorithm to determine predictive measures to suggest dining excursions and things like spa treatments. Now, the intent here is personalization, and the effect, though, often feels like targeted advertising, which at the end of the day, if we're being honest, when it comes to algorithms in business, it's all marketing. So if you book a sushi class, you might get offers for specialty restaurants. If you book one spa treatment, you'll probably start getting pop-up offers on your app nudging you towards another. Now, these reminders can be helpful. I'm not opposed to algorithms. They can be very, very efficient in a lot of ways. But when it becomes a constant push of notifications, and it starts to feel a little too invasive, like sometimes when you're talking to a friend and you offhandedly mention something and now all of a sudden you look at your phone and you see all kinds of ads about that thing, it starts to feel invasive, it starts to feel annoying. But remember that artificial intelligence suggestions pushed by cruise lines on the cruise line app and other websites when you're logged into your dashboard, they're just that, they're suggestions. Now, some cruise lines have chatbots. You can ask them things like, where's the nearest bar? You can ask it for a deck plan, and others are generic. But don't assume that the app knows your preferences better than you do, regardless of how good that algorithm is or isn't. So I want to know, do you like being sold things if it's custom tailored to your needs? Honestly, it does get annoying, but sometimes I find it actually handy because there might be a product or service that I didn't know about that I actually want to participate in or purchase that the algorithm determines for me that I wouldn't otherwise probably find. Now let's talk about a cruise line that really has taken innovation to the next level. It's one of my favorite cruise lines, but I don't sail them very often because it is adults only, and because they kind of have limited itineraries compared to a lot of the competitors. And that is Virgin Voyages. Now, Virgin Voyage has taken an innovation-first approach. Like Princess and their medallion system, Virgin doesn't use key cards, but they use a red wristband called the Band. It's made from recycled ocean plastic, and they used to mail it to you before the cruise, but now you just get it at embarkation. It's actually really cute and kind of like an accessory. I'll see if I can go find mine. Okay, I did a quick look. I couldn't find it, but trust me when I tell you it's cute. It's a little red band. It has like a little metal emblem you get to kind of pick and customize. To an extent, there's like 5 options. But anyway, the band is kind of like a fob. It has a fob on it, and it acts like your room key, your boarding pass, and your payment method. And for degenerate casino players, you also use this to track your points in the casino when you're playing slots. And it also helps staff locate you to deliver on-demand services. On Virgin ships, that wristband also works in tandem with the Virgin Voyages app. For example, the app includes a playful shake for champagne feature where you shake your phone with the Virgin app, a secret button appears, and you can order a bottle of champagne to be delivered not just to your stateroom, but anywhere on board. And that bottle arrives in a red bucket with flutes. So it's indulgent, it's silly, it's kind of useless, but it's fun. And it's a reminder that technology can be both functional and also theatrical. I personally love those silly little touches. Now, Virgin Voyages, I love them too because their cabins themselves are pretty tech forward. Instead of giving you a crusty old remote control, they give you a tablet, which is basically an iPad encased in a special case. And you use that to control your room's air conditioning, your curtains. So if you have a balcony, you can open and close the curtains at will. It's great when you're in bed. You forget to close your curtains at night. In the morning, that sun comes shining in. You're not ready to get up yet. You just pull out the iPad and you close them. And they have LED lights throughout the room for ambient lighting that you can adjust on the iPad as well. And it also functions as your TV remote control. You can also call for room service. There's so much that you can do with this iPad. And having everything integrated into one device just really is handy and actually helpful for a cruiser. And it's one of the things that I love about Virgin Voyages. Now, like all technology, it has its limitations. I've had some situations where I've gone to sleep, I didn't put the tablet back on its docking station to charge overnight, and you end up with a dead tablet and you have to remember how to do things the old-fashioned way. But it's still a pretty cool value add, at least in my opinion. So I wanna know, if you've cruised Virgin Voyages, what do you think about their tech-forward approach? Does it work for you, or is it glitchy? And what do you think about it? Does it add and enhance the value of your cruise? Now let's talk about some practical considerations and some maybe not as emerging tech, but important tech nonetheless. Power outlets. These are a hot button issue when it comes to cruising, because they are scarce, friends. If you take a cruise on an older ship, you might find yourself having one electrical outlet with 2 plugs. And if you have 2, 3, 4 people crammed in a room, you're gonna struggle. And we all rely on a lot of devices. I have AirPods, I have a phone. My best friend who travels with me often, she's an Apple Watch. I travel with my laptop because I have to work when I cruise. We have a lot of things to charge. And then there's hair stuff. Girls, we have so many hair things. Now, the good news is many cruise lines allow non-surge power strips. And I always bring one on every cruise with one big caveat, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But it's important to note that if you bring a power strip, it has to be non-surge. No cruise line will allow you to bring a surge protector because it can interfere with their electrical systems. Now, I love Royal Caribbean, but they drive me crazy with this one thing, and that is that they are absolutely the most strict when it comes to these power strips. In fact, they ban them all together. And I always heard this, and I remember back when I took my first Royal Caribbean cruise years ago, and I kind of didn't believe it, and I brought my trusty non-surge protector, and sure enough, they scanned it, they saw it, they confiscated it. I got it back later, but it was a whole thing. And then I had no way to charge my stuff, and I struggled the whole time with it. So make sure you're aware of cruise line policies, know that Royal Caribbean power strips are gonna be a no-go, but with most other cruise lines, you're gonna be a-okay with a power strip as long as it is of the non-surge type. So that's a little bit more of the less emerging technology, but a very important one when it comes to cruising. Now, there are some other innovations that actually come into play when it comes to safety. High-tech features, they're not just about convenience, fun, shaking for champagne, accessing your room easily, but they also play a critical role in safety. I recently watched the Amy Bradley is Missing case. It's from the late 90s. It's a cruiser on Royal Caribbean. She disappeared from a cruise ship. Nobody knows where she went, what happened. Speculation is she fell overboard. Now, if this case happened in more modern times, we would pretty definitively know whether or not a cruise passenger falls overboard or not, because cruise lines now have man-overboard detection systems. And this recently came into play on Disney Cruise Line. They have a man-overboard detection system, and it uses thermal imaging and cameras alongside the ship to alert the bridge if someone is detected through technology falling into the water. In June 2025, a child fell overboard from a Disney ship and was very quickly immediately rescued. Her dad went in after her, and both of them were immediately rescued. And news reports noted that Disney ships being equipped with these overboard detection systems that are by design intended to alert the crew in real time, ASAP, played a critical role in their swift rescue. So the way the system works is it detects the splash or heat signature of a person entering the water, and then it triggers an alarm so the crew knows to launch that rescue boat immediately. Now, this technology is kind of subtle. It's not something you'll notice on a normal sailing. It's not like there's big tools or cameras jutting out from the ship, but they're there. They're just a little bit more subtle and hidden. But it is an important layer of protection that helps keep all of us cruisers safe. And knowing these systems exist adds peace of mind. Now, I think it's pretty hard to just accidentally fall off a cruise ship if you're an adult, at least. I guess it can happen if you're a kid, but it's nice to know that these safeguards are in place and that cruise lines are using technology in a safety-forward fashion. Now, there's another area where smart engineering and technology can improve your voyage, but it's a little bit more low-key. It's not about your experience. It's not about keeping you from falling off the ship or detecting the crew if you do, but it's about what's happening below the waterline. Now, I will admit, I've never had much interest in this, but I did just sail MSC World America. I got invited to the loyalty gathering. Since I do have status, I status matched from Carnival. So I took my Carnival status, I matched it with MSC, so I have higher status than I otherwise would have on MSC, so I get invited to things like this. And in it, we got to hear the crew and the captain present about some of MSC's innovations. And I was really kind of intrigued to learn about some of them that are on World America that I did not know about. One of which is that MSC World America is run on liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Now, I have heard about this. I know a lot of the newer cruise ships, especially the mega ships, are designed to run on LNG, but this is basically an alternative to the traditional heavy fuel oil. LNG is supposed to drastically reduce pollutants, meaning the ship burns fuel that produces 99% fewer sulfur oxides, 85% less nitrogen oxides, and about 20% fewer greenhouse gas emissions compared to the conventional marine fuels. Now, on days when LNG is not available, the vessels are designed to use a selective catalytic reduction system to cut nitrogen oxide emissions by roughly 90%. So this is some cutting edge tech that makes the cruise lines more efficient. I'm sure it saves the cruise lines money, but as a cruiser who is concerned, at least a little bit, about the environmental impact of these big cruise ships, because that's a very real issue, this does make me feel a little bit better as a cruiser, knowing that cruise lines are advancing technology in ways that lessen the environmental impact. MSC is also experimenting with some solid oxide fuel cells on their sister ship, MSC World Europa, to even further reduce emissions. And here's another thing the captain talked about that was really interesting to me. MSC World America's hull has been engineered to glide through the water efficiently. Now, obviously, all cruise ships should glide through the water efficiently, but what's different with this design is that it has new propeller designs. And these propeller designs are meant to dramatically reduce underwater resistance and the underwater noise. And it's meant to limit and minimize and mitigate a lot of that marine disruption, because obviously cruise ships are massive. They're floating cities, and those engines and those propellers create a lot of vibration and sound that can disrupt marine life. So MSC's design is meant to minimize that acoustic footprint. And I think that's actually really cool. Now, the company says that the hull and the engine room on World Europa have been shaped to lower that underwater sound impact, reducing that potential harm to marine mammals and the surrounding waters. Because if you're like me and you love to cruise, you probably love the ocean, including all of the animals that inhabit it. So I'm excited to see cruise lines moving in this direction, and I applaud MSC for taking the lead with these innovations. Now let's talk about the hidden costs of technology, because you know what? Technology is not free. Smart features aren't free. Robot bartenders, AR experiences, app development, these all come at a cost to the cruise lines, and they can have a cost. AI-driven upselling nudges us toward things that we probably otherwise wouldn't buy. So as consumers, we have to be cognizant of these things to avoid getting taken advantage of by big marketing. Even Virgin's wristband makes tapping to pay seamless. And that's great when we're cashless on a ship and we're just tapping or putting our card out. You're not thinking about it. You start to lose track of the value of money and forget, this is going on my stateroom account. This isn't free. I'm going to pay for it just later. So it's really easy to forget how much that you spent when all you're doing is tapping your wrist. So my biggest takeaway is that technology enhances, but it doesn't replace the human aspect of cruising. And while we might enjoy the benefits of tech, we have to be mindful of the human cost of the tech, both in terms of changing our consumer behavior as customers of these cruise lines, and also in minimizing some of those human interactions that make cruising so special. So while I'm very tech forward as a person, I love technology, I get excited about it. For example, Carnival, this is a minor technical innovation, but it really excites me. They finally now added to where you can order your Java Blue coffee on the Hub app. So you don't have to wait in line. It's kind of like Starbucks where you order ahead. Stuff like that. I love it. It makes my cruise experience more enjoyable and more efficient, but it does come at a cost. So I want to know what you think. Technology, is it good? Is it exciting? Or do you prefer the good old-fashioned way of cruising?